What happens when a Hollywood icon meets a daytime host who refuses to show respect? On live television in front of millions, Joy Behar pushed Emma Watson to the breaking point, mocking her activism, questioning her authenticity, and ridiculing her career until she finally stood up, defended herself with dignity, and walked away, leaving the entire studio stunned. You've never seen Emma Watson like this before. Calm, collected, and then devastating. Joy Behar thought she could humiliate her on her turf, but the icon reminded everyone why she's still an inspiration at heart. This is the story of the day Hollywood met its match and won. The studio lights blazed as the morning taping of The View began. Fans in the audience clutched their phones, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman who defined an era of cinema for a generation, Emma Watson. At 30, she was promoting her new film, a passion project she both produced and starred in about a pioneering female scientist, a powerful story of intellect and perseverance. When she walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted into applause. Dressed in a chic, tailored pantsuit, her thoughtful smile radiant, Emma waved warmly and sat down. "Welcome, Ms. Watson," Joy Behar began, her tone already sharper than usual, though it was hidden under her signature grin. Or should I say Hermione Granger? Still the smartest girl in the room, I see. The audience chuckled nervously. Emma raised her eyebrows but smiled politely. "Well, I guess some roles stay with you," she replied, leaning back in her chair. Joy didn't wait a beat. "Do they? Or are you just clinging to relevance by giving us the same old lecture in a different package? I mean, you've been playing this role since what? Before some of our viewers were even born." The studio audience fell silent. Emma folded her hands calmly and looked her in the eye. "I like to think that storytelling can be both entertaining and meaningful, Joy. At least that's what keeps audiences interested in these kinds of films." The other host shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. But Joy pressed on. "Or maybe," she said with a pointed laugh, "they come back because they're nostalgic for the old you, the one who wasn't, what's the word, preaching to them from a pedestal." A few gasps could be heard from the audience. Even the cameramen seemed to pause. Emma let out a small, patient sigh, though her jaw tightened just slightly. "I believe you can use your platform for good and still tell a compelling story. The two aren't mutually exclusive." Joy wasn't finished. She leaned closer. "Use your platform? Maybe, but whose platform is it? Do you really think your, how shall we put it, holier-than-thou shtick still works in today's world?" Emma leaned forward now, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "Well, I'd say it works as long as people feel inspired by the message, and they seem to." There was a smattering of applause from the audience, but Joy rolled her eyes and waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, please, that's just a vocal minority. No one really wants to be lectured by celebrities anymore." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop. Emma sat back in her chair, resting one ankle over the opposite knee. Her smile had faded, but her composure remained intact. "Well," she said softly, "I've always believed that people care about stories of substance, and it seems to me from the conversations these films generate, they still care about this one." Joy leaned back, a victorious smirk on her face. "We'll see how long that lasts, won't we?" Harrison simply nodded as though he had heard it all before. But inside, something was shifting. The legend was being tested, and everyone could feel it. Her chair and tightened her grip on the stack of cards in front of her. Her eyes glinted, not with humor anymore, but with a pointed determination to push further. Harrison adjusted his cufflinks and glanced briefly toward the other hosts who sat like statues, clearly unwilling to intervene. The air was thick with a kind of tension usually reserved for courtroom dramas. Joy smirked and continued. "Well, Emma, you say people care about your substance, but don't you think at some point it's time to let go? To just be an actress? You've had a good run with the activism, but don't you feel ridiculous pretending to be the world's conscience at your age?" A few gasps and an audible oof came from the audience. Emma blinked slowly. "Pretending?" she asked, her tone cool. "Well, Joy, acting is pretending, isn't it? That's the whole point of the craft, unless you thought all this was real." The audience tittered nervously. Joy's smile tightened. "Oh, don't get clever with me, Emma," she shot back. What I mean is, when we see you on screen these days, we're all just waiting for the sermon to end. Laughter bubbled from the crowd, nervous, awkward, not quite sure if they should. Emma remained still, her fingers laced together in her lap, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp as a tack. "I see," she said after a moment. "Well, I'm glad I can still make people think. That's good storytelling, I think." Joy leaned forward, unwilling to let go. "You know what I think? I think you've made a career out of playing the same preachy, know-it-all for 20 years, and everyone's too polite to tell you it's boring. You're boring now, Emma. Don't you ever feel ashamed of showing up to collect a paycheck for the same role over and over?" The words hung in the air like a dagger. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, their whirring fans audible in the dead silence that followed. Emma didn't flinch. "Shame," she repeated softly. "No, Joy, not once. Because every time I show up, I speak for ideas that matter. I speak for young women who grew up watching a character who taught them it was okay to be smart. And now they see a woman who uses her voice for equality. And for me, that's worth more than any paycheck." The audience clapped timidly, but Joy cut through it with a dismissive wave. "Please, Emma, stop romanticizing it. You're just another overpaid movie star who's lucky the industry still humors your pet projects. Tell me, do you even enjoy acting anymore? Or are you just addicted to the validation?" At that, Emma leaned forward, her voice low, deliberate. "You know, Joy, I didn't come here today for your approval or for your diagnosis of my motivations. I came here to talk about a film, a story that my crew and I poured our hearts into. But you seem far more interested in tearing down the person telling the story than hearing about the story itself." Joy scoffed loudly. "Oh, don't play the victim, Emma. You've had more opportunities than anyone could dream of. But let's be honest, you're just a preachy young woman clinging to what little relevance you have left outside of that wizard movie." Emma straightened her back, her eyes glinting now, though her voice remained calm. "Maybe I am preachy. Maybe that's because I've seen enough in this world to know the difference between someone asking tough questions and someone who just enjoys being cruel." The audience erupted, this time with real applause, but Joy slammed her palm on the table to quiet them. "Don't flatter yourself. You can't take criticism, and that's why you'll always just be another fragile ego in Hollywood." Emma looked down at the table for a moment, then back up at Joy, her lips twitching into the faintest smile. "I've taken plenty of criticism in my life, Joy, but I've never mistaken cruelty for honesty." And with that, she sat back, letting her words settle into the room like a hammer strike. The audience was riveted. The other hosts were silent, their eyes darting back and forth between the two. And Joy Behar, she leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing, realizing that she might have finally awakened the full force of the woman who had faced down dark wizards on screen and was now facing her. The battle was far from over, but the icon had just drawn her line in the sand. The studio lights seemed to burn hotter as the silence stretched between them, a standoff that was now impossible to ignore. Joy leaned forward in her chair, her fingers tapping an impatient rhythm on the glossy table. Emma remained upright and composed, though a faint tension in her jaw betrayed her restraint. "Well," Joy finally said, her voice laced with derision, "you always were good at pretending to be unbothered. That must come in handy, huh? Playing poised heroines while secretly terrified everyone will figure out you're just another self-serious actress coasting on your name." The words sliced through the air like shards of glass. Several audience members gasped audibly. Even the producers in the control booth exchanged worried looks. This wasn't television anymore. This was a knife fight. Emma tilted her head slightly as though regarding an insect that had wandered onto her sleeve. Her hands stayed neatly folded in front of him. "You know, Joy," she began slowly, "you have an impressive ability to reduce years of advocacy into a single insult. Almost like that's your real craft. Not comedy, not journalism, just bitterness." The audience murmured, some even clapping tentatively. Joy's cheeks flushed, but her smirk deepened. "Oh, that's rich," she spat. "Bitterness? No, Emma. This is honesty. You're just not used to someone telling you the truth to your face. You've been pampered for so long. You wouldn't recognize honesty if it punched you in the gut." She arched an eyebrow. "I've been punched plenty of times, Joy. On screen, off screen. This doesn't even tickle. The audience chuckled, but Joy refused to let the moment slip away. You're not untouchable, she pressed, her voice rising slightly. You walk in here with your little poise and your perfect diction, and you think you can charm your way out of everything. But here's the thing, you're not inspiring anymore. You're just home. That word, sad, seemed to hang in the air longer than the rest. Emma blinked once, then leaned forward ever so slightly. Her voice remained low, measured, yet carried the weight of a storm waiting to break. Sad, is it? She said. Well, let me tell you what I find sad, Joy. Sad is sitting here every morning, sneering at people you've never met, mocking the very things that others work their entire lives to build just so you can feel a little taller in your chair. She gestured around the table. Sad is taking a platform that could inspire people, lift them up, and instead turning it into a firing squad. The other hosts, Whoopi, Sunny, and Sarah, sat frozen, wide-eyed, looking anywhere but at Joy. But Joy doubled down, slamming her palm on the table. Oh, don't you dare lecture me, Emma Watson. You think you're some kind of saint because you memorized a few lines and gave a speech at the UN. Give me a break. You don't build anything. You don't help anyone. You just play pretend and collect checks while the rest of us do the real work. For the first time, Emma's composure cracked just slightly. She exhaled, straightened, and pushed her chair back with a soft scrape against the floor. When she stood, the entire studio seemed to shrink under her presence. You're right, she said quietly. I do play pretend. But those stories, the ones you mock, they've given people hope. They've given young girls heroes to look up to. They've brought families together in theaters for generations. That matters. His eyes locked on hers, unflinching. You want to talk about building something? I've been part of building characters and worlds that have lived far longer than your insults ever will. And unlike you, I don't tear people down to feel tall. That's not work, Joy. That's just cruelty masquerading as wit. A ripple of applause broke out in the audience. This time louder, more confident. Joy's face darkened. Oh, sit down, Emma, she snapped. You're being dramatic. But she didn't. She took one deliberate step toward her side of the table. Dramatic? She repeated, her voice still quiet but deadly sharp. You haven't seen dramatic yet, but keep going. I've got plenty more to say. And with that, the air in the studio thickened to the point of suffocation. Joy, perhaps realizing she had finally pushed too far, sat back slightly, though her eyes still burned with defiance. Emma placed both hands flat on the table, leaning down just enough to bring herself to her level. You've spent this entire interview trying to humiliate me, to chip away at me as though it would make you look strong, but all it's done is show everyone here how small you really are. She straightened and adjusted her jacket. I won't be part of your circus any longer. And with that, she turned her back to her and began to walk toward the exit. The studio audience erupted. Some in applause, some in shocked silence. Joy called after him, her voice shrill now, but her words barely audible over the noise. And Emma Watson kept walking, her dignity intact, leaving a stunned studio and a battered Joy Behar in her wake. The studio door loomed closer with each of Emma's steady steps, her silhouette outlined by the blinding stage lights as she walked away from the chaos behind her. Each footfall seemed to echo louder than the last, punctuating the stunned silence left in her wake. Joy sat rigidly in her chair, her fingers gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. For a few seconds, she said nothing, just stared at the back of the woman who had dismantled her word by word in front of millions. But then, as if realizing she was losing control of her stage, Joy shot to her feet. That's right, Emma, she barked, her voice cracking over the sound of murmuring audience members and shuffling producers. Walk away when someone finally has the guts to call you out on your hypocrisy. That's what you do, isn't it? You run when someone finally has the guts to call you out. Her words hung there like a sour fog, but this time Emma stopped. She didn't turn around at first. Instead, she placed a hand lightly on the frame of the exit door, pausing, her back still to her. Slowly, deliberately, she turned, the studio lights catching the sharp edge of her expression. And when she spoke, her voice was calm, but it cut like steel. You really don't get it, do you? She said softly. Joy blinked, thrown by her tone, no longer angry, but almost disappointed. "You think this is about me running?" Emma continued, her words carrying over the silent audience. "No, Joy, this is about me knowing when to stop playing a rigged game." She stepped forward, back toward the table just a few paces, and fixed her with that famous stare. The one that had frozen dark lords and ignorant bullies alike. "You've spent your whole career convincing yourself that cruelty is strength, that sarcasm is wit, that humiliation makes for good television. And maybe for a while people bought it. Maybe you even believed it." She glanced around the room at the other hosts, at the crew, at the audience, and then back to her. "But all it's really done is leave you sitting in that chair every morning, tearing down people who built something while you just sit here and sneer at them." Joy opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. "I've spent 20 years showing up, doing the work, bringing stories to life, giving people something to feel, whether it was magic or adventure or the courage to speak up when they needed it. And sure, not everyone liked me. Not every project was perfect, but I showed up." Her voice dropped even lower, quieter, but sharper. "And all you've shown today is how ugly it looks when someone stops pretending to be decent." The studio was dead silent now. Even the cameras stopped moving, as if afraid to disrupt the moment. Joy folded her arms, forcing a scoff through the tension. "You done with your speech, movie star?" A faint, humorless smile tugged at the corner of Emma's mouth. "Yeah," she said, "I'm done here." "But you, Joy, you've still got to sit in that chair tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. You've still on to wake up and look in the mirror and pretend that what you're doing means something." She straightened, adjusted her jacket, and finally turned to leave. "I hope someday you figure out what it feels like to actually create something instead of just trying to destroy it. But until then," she let the words hang there, then gave a small shake of her head, "I've got nothing left to say to you." And with that, she strode toward the exit, slow, deliberate, unshaken, while the audience began to murmur and clap, some standing as he passed by. One of the producers scrambled to intercept her at the door, whispering frantically, but Emma simply raised a hand and kept walking. The door swung open and shut behind her with a soft but final click. Joy stood alone now, her face a patchwork of anger and something she couldn't quite hide: shame. The remaining hosts exchanged awkward glances, no one daring to speak first. The audience sat in stunned silence, a few people capturing the aftermath on their phones. After what felt like an eternity, Joy sank slowly back into her chair, her gaze fixed on the empty space where Emma had stood. In the control booth, someone finally had the sense to cut to commercial. But it was too late. The damage was done. The clip would be replayed on news shows, analyzed by commentators, and dissected on social media for weeks to come. Some would call it the day Emma Watson ended Joy Behar. Others would say it was just another example of how toxic daytime television had become. But everyone agreed on one thing. That day, the woman they called Hermione Granger walked out of The View with more dignity than the entire panel combined. And Joy Behar was left with nothing but the sound of the door closing and the weight of her own words echoing back at her. What did you think of this unforgettable showdown? Was Emma Watson right to stand her ground and walk away? Or should she have stayed and endured the attacks? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another behind-the-scenes drama. Thanks for watching Celeb Courage Chronicles, where the real stories behind the headlines come to life.